thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us. It's a real
How are you
pleasure.
both?
Good. Yeah, really, really good at the moment. Things are busy.
Always busy, yeah.
Yeah, always busy. No, it's positive vibes.
End of summer. I feel like in the UK it's just like that, and
Yeah, I was going
summer's gone.
I was going to say what summer as well. I feel like we've been robbed this year, if I'm honest.
Do you think?
Yeah, I don't think we got an amazing, like in terms of weather, it's a very British thing to go straight into, isn't
I
it?
know it is, but it is true though.
But it has gone quick, yeah. But then I find this quite an exciting time of year. Like I think we were talking about earlier, going towards ADE.
Yeah.
And musically, I think it's really cool as well. Like all artists start to hunker down a bit in the studio, and it's a good time for music, I think. So yeah.
And you've recently, has it been this week, just released a new course at Toolroom Academy?
Yeah, as it started this week.
Oh, it started this week
so
already?
We announced it in April. We did a conference in London to announce our research report and the course that followed from that. But the first cohort started literally on Monday, didn't it? So
It was Monday. We had our first sort of feedback live call with some of the students this morning, which was cool, really exciting. So yeah, we're underway.
So the course came from the report. How long were you working on this report for, just to start off?
So the report took around a few months. Yeah, it was commissioned. We commissioned audience strategies.
Yeah.
David Boyle and Rufi Ghazi did a great job, and we spoke to around 273 artists. So it's quite comprehensive.
Wow.
It took some time to really get into it.
And what was the actual purpose behind doing this report?
So I think for us, like we'd been on this journey over the last 5 or 6 years at the Academy of trying to innovate production education in house music. And I think, I wouldn't say that's mission complete, but we've done a lot of good work, I think, in helping artists learn to make house music and then get their music released. But we were finding there's still kind of an issue that they weren't necessarily turning those musical creative wins into career wins. So they're kind of doing the right thing of writing great music, getting signings, but they weren't expecting that to necessarily turn into full-time careers, but they weren't seeing that bit of momentum that you'd normally expect from those signings. So we wanted to figure out what's the problem, what's the disconnect here, and hopefully create some educational product to help. But the first thing we wanted to do was really get under the hood of what the problem was. What was the skill gap? What were the barriers that they were facing in order to achieve those things?
What did they perceive? What were the things that they actually thought they had to do to make it as an artist? Because, it can be really different from someone who's not actually made it yet and in the scene, of what they perceive and think they've got to do to achieve actually getting on that ladder and starting to break through.
And I guess as well that I think I was talking about this with somebody today, that this industry just is so fast paced and everything changes so quickly that maybe what was necessary 5, 6, 7 years back is now totally different. And there's so many other necessities that you need as an artist to succeed.
I think a lot of new artists, again, they don't realise what it takes. There's so much more now than just music. Music's the initial product, it's the beginning, but that's just the start of the journey. Beyond there now, to actually get into the industry and what it takes, there's so much for them to understand, to learn, to get stuck into, to really be able to sort of grow and start becoming an artist.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a big thing. It's a huge area. It's a huge minefield for them to start sort of stepping into.
What were the most surprising findings from this survey?
I think for me personally, I think the thing we found most surprising was there's a headline statistic that 76% of people felt they couldn't build a sustainable career. And I think that even though we're in a slight sort of more age of cynicism, and I think people they know the challenges and it's not easy, not everyone can make it. That still worried me actually, because I think that at the start of your careers, that's when you should feel the most hopeful and you should have the biggest dreams. But the fact that, over 3/4 feel that it's not going to happen for them, that to me is a massive problem. And I think in our industry, actually, the reason I wanted this to go out was I think our industry really relies economically on this creator segment. So a lot of the growth in the dance music industry, if you go to most conferences, the new initiatives, it's always education or technology to help producers. And if you look at the future of the music industry, they're saying it's the bifurcation model where you're going to have people that are passive listeners and then people that are creators. And like they're just as important in the ecosystem of making money in music. So we rely on them on this segment, but we're not giving them the chance to break through, I think. So it's an interesting problem I think we need to address. So that was one really interesting thing. I think the other two for me was that 88% of people felt they couldn't build an online following. So that's a massive number.
That's huge number, 88%.
Yeah, so basically all of them.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
And then the other one was like 2% felt their network was strong. 2%.
Only 2% felt that when you say network, you mean like your professional network of people that you know.
Yeah.
2%.
Yeah.
I think they felt really cut off, really separated, just not being able to get in to the industry, even where to start, making connections, talking to people. They felt very, very separate. You know, it's like this celebrity thing, isn't it? Looking at the industry as something quite far away and untangible, which was... It's kind of frightening. It was an eye-opener for us to see how so many of them felt like that.
Just taking it back to, did you say 88% were online, for people that found it difficult to build an online presence?
Yeah.
Do you think, because I mean, and I know this is something that's spoken about a lot, there is a lot of pressure with having a social media presence. And I know a lot of artists that really struggle mentally to get their head around get their head around that. Like, what do you guys feel in terms of social media and people that need to try and kind of overcome that fear of having to be out there constantly all the time?
Good question. Because when you think about it, like what we all see and consume is everyone being really good at it.
Yeah, exactly.
So everything that you see is like, I've got to live up to that. That's what I've got to be. And that's not normal. That's not life. Everyone is not a great instant TV presenter, personality, but someone that can just talk like that as if there's an audience there. You know, it's something that not everyone can do. And I think everyone just feels that pressure straight away without even realising that there are multiple ways they can be themselves and communicate through social media. So I think there's an instant fear. There's just an instant fear because what you're seeing is polished in a way. You know, it's content and stuff that is great. So it puts people on the back foot straight away. And I think we forget that of all these people, it's probably just a small percentage that actually hold a natural ability of being that sort of outgoing person on social media as a platform.
Yeah.
And I think that's particularly typical of producers, like from my experience.
Yeah.
Producers are the lifeblood of this scene. Without any music, we've got nothing, right? But producers tend to be quite type A, like quite detail specific, perfectionists. If you were to write a list of qualities that don't help you build social media, it would be a lot of those things.
Yeah.
You've got to let go and be a bit vulnerable and make mistakes. So we really find that at the Toolroom Academy, it's a real issue. And the other thing is like people do get issues, like people are worried about the metrics, but they're also worried about not knowing what to post. That's one observation I've made is like people, they know they've got to post and they know they have to think of content. And what the research report said was building a personal brand was such a kind of dark area that people didn't know what to do. And then executing content and understanding the algorithms, people were completely unaware of that as well. So I think there's this sort of pressure of like, I know I've got to post and I don't know what to post, as well as I don't have X amount of followers.
It seems like a huge thing to become, but it's like, well, where's the training for that?
Yeah.
To become good at that, because it just seems huge, a huge task to undertake, to understand it from when you're at that level.
And you're so right in what you're saying. It's not just the fact of having to create that content. It's also like the part of, okay, I've got the content, but now what do I do with it? And on top of that there are so many platforms now, whether do I go on TikTok? Am I just on Instagram? Do I use that as a story? Is that a reel? Am I going on shorts? There's just like, it's a whole new world.
Totally.
It's not new world, but it's a whole world.
It is. And I think if you think of someone as an artist or a producer, how long they've spent learning the new world of production and getting comfortable in that, and they know that the time it's taken to become good at that, and then you're faced with this daunting task of I've got to learn something which is totally new but totally alien really to most people as well, you know.
What are the other critical barriers have you found that artists are facing when trying to make it to that next level in their career?
Gosh, there's a few, aren't there?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, from my side, I'm obviously heavily involved with the music, and there's a lot of things that even just that final part of becoming an artist and having an identity within their music that's going to stand out and resonate, for them to actually have something that is going to help them get noticed is a huge thing, because so many producers have spent all this time, this dedication, getting amazing at what they do. And when you're very close to it, you almost can't see that and see that point of actually going, right, what does it take with my music just to break through and have that extra edge? I think that's been a huge thing for me, working closely with them on the music side of things.
Yeah, agreed. I think to add to that, I think there's like financial barriers. Like I feel like, you forget the amount of financial investment needed sometimes to kind of keep that level of pressure and always be in the studio and thinking of content ideas and investing in education, investing in, equipment. So that's something people struggle with, to balance that with like full-time jobs.
Am I right in saying that was like 76% say that their music career isn't financially sustainable, with many relying on non-music jobs?
Yeah, exactly that.
76%.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. And, it's something we've got to be mindful of as a commercial enterprise as well. Like we try and keep our prices as competitive as possible. We have scholarship spots, but you can't do that for everyone. And so I think financial pressures. I think geographical, still it's great. We're a global world, and we're personally selling education in all continents really. But you do get people that are stuck out in a limb sometimes, and interestingly, even people that are based in like big cities sometimes feel disconnected from networks, not being able
Totally. I think producers in general, when they're at that stage, in the early stages, they feel disconnected, I think is a good word. You can feel quite lonely and isolated.
Yeah.
It's some people that spend a lot of time completely dedicated to their craft, to their art, to being creative, not feeling necessarily part of something, which I think that adds a lot of fear. I think a lot of the struggles is actually getting past that hurdle of starting to reach out and become part of something. Is feeling alone at the start, and it's getting past that.
I guess that kind of like circles back to what we were saying about networking as well, like putting yourself out there and meeting people, because for some people it's easy to go out there and be a network, and I'll meet somebody, and as we were saying before, like ADE, for example, I'll go meet you for a beer or whatever. But for other people, that's really difficult.
Yeah.
And a lot, I know so many people that like, have social anxiety. And even though we work in an industry that is very much like entertainment and we're out there, it can be quite daunting.
Massively. And I don't even think new artists realise the actual how beneficial and important networking is.
Yeah.
From the students that we've worked with, it's something that we really talk about and focus on. I mean, even within our production programmes, that alone, it's a huge part of the new artist development masterclass that we focus on. They don't even realise that when they first come in. As I said, it goes back to them just spending all this time alone. They have a few producer friends, and it's something we focus on within our courses of a group of 20 students, and helping them create that network at the beginning.
Yeah.
And suddenly realising there's more people in the same boat, but then realising that it can actually help me, even from everything of just feeling better about myself to finding new opportunities. And they suddenly realise the power of just opening up to a network and meeting new people, which is just the beginning of networking and pushing on in the industry.
Do you think that lack of networking, or finding it harder to network, is seen more commonly in younger generations due to social media? Because now, obviously, a lot of us just meet people, like you're like Instagram friends, but you actually don't know each other. But then when you actually go out and meet them in person, it's like, oh, I'm actually going to speak to somebody in real life,
Yeah.
So I wonder if you've seen any kind of pattern in like certain
That's really interesting.
ages.
It is really interesting. I think because we have really broad ages.
We do.
When you look at a typical class of 20 producers, and you've literally got age from 17 to 62 I've had in one class of people that are doing a production class. And I think I see it from both sides. I see a lot of older people who haven't even come through the social media side can be afraid because it's been a long time, but then some of them have confidence because of other experiences just in life. And then you say some younger ones that have actually spent so much time virtually talking to people.
Yeah.
And there's an amount we talk about of virtually networking. You can use that to a point, but we're saying you've got to get out there. You've got to get out there and physically try to actually meet brands, go to conferences and be part of it. And I do think sometimes some of the younger generation actually can find that a bit daunting as well. It's both sides. I think with both.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think we have a program called our Production Masterclass, which is like a one-to-one thing. Most of our business is online, but we have a one-to-one element, and it's a good basis of comparison because you have one person coming into Toolroom HQ, and from kind of my personal experience, I feel like the older students generally have come in and been a bit more like commanding of the room and brought like donuts in or something. You know, there's like little things you learn in life. So to make people remember you and make an impact, whereas the younger people, from my experience, have been maybe a little bit more overwhelmed and daunted by it. And so that's one thing.
Which I think is probably some of it's just inexperience, isn't it?
And but as you say, the digital world, kind of, I don't know, it takes that sort of fear away because you can just send a message, send a DM, and maybe you lose then the kind of the skills of coming in and commanding the room a little bit.
Come in, bring a box of donuts, 100%.
And that will get you signed.
That will get,
Take one thing.
And you're released, you're going to be top 10.
Donuts are always welcome. Krispy Kremes, other brands are available. They're always welcome at Toolroom HQ, that's for sure.
It's true though. It is so important, isn't it? Having like going out and actually pushing yourself to go out and network. I think
100%.
Most of the artists that I've ever interviewed, speaking of a question, like asking the question, if you could give one piece of advice to upcoming artists, what would it be? And the majority will say, get yourself out there and network.
Totally. I mean, to give you one example for me, I mean, and I'm not saying there's only one way, but as a record label, Toolroom receives anything from, on a quiet week, 200 demos a week. Yep. On a busy week, you could go into 400 or 500 a week.
What?
A week, right? Demos coming through, and that's in various forms through platforms we use like Label Radar, through some producers and artists doing what we advise, like really knuckling down and researching and working out emails and emailing the office and stuff. It's quite hard to go through. Now, I've got one memory that always stands out. There's a couple, but one, we did an event, Studio 338 in London, and I just had the feeling sometimes you can tune in to that someone's just staring at you. And I was in the booth, I was in the DJ booth, and I've probably helped myself to Mark's Rider. And I just clocked someone right at the back of the room, just sort of standing still. Normally there's a room, everyone's going off. And it was like these eyes coming through, and I was a bit like, okay.
Horror film,
you're like looking behind, like, this is me?
Yeah. I'm going to get more of this happen to me now, aren't I? And it was where, because annoyingly, the one annoying thing about that club, you've got to trot right across the dance floor through everyone right to the back to use the loo. There's no backstage loo. And I remember going across and then coming back, and someone just stepped in front of me, a bit nervous, and was like, "Hey Pete, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. I just really wanted to just get your attention." I was like, this dude's been watching. He's been biding his time. He's come to this club night, and it turned out he was on his own. Aww. And he was just hanging around, and he'd worked out who people were, and he just wanted to hand deliver me a USB. And I was like, dude, and he ended up buying me a beer, and we chatted at the bar for 20 minutes. And, I woke up the next day and I'm like, hey, what's this in my pocket? Pulled out a USB and I was like, oh, this is this dude. And I now see him at other events and stuff. And we're chatting because he made that extra effort and went well out of his comfort zone. And I think for me, that's the sort of thing for networking where it's not just you have to go to an event, you've got to push outside. Yeah. Push outside your comfort zone.
Exactly.
And go for it, take opportunities.
That's great. I just get LinkedIn DMs. I don't get any beers bought from me.
You got nobody staring at you in the clubs.
I wish. Just get a DM so can I go on the promo list, please? But we do teach a lot about. I think you can effectively network digitally as well.
Yeah,
totally you can.
You've got to do it the right way because it's so much easier to do it. There's no barrier. There's no cringe factor. Yeah. So therefore, you can just send a really dry LinkedIn DM or whatever. And that won't get you anywhere. Yeah. So in the course, we also teach a lot about give, take. So if you're going to network with someone, especially online, an appropriate thing might be like a message saying, "Oh, I saw that podcast, it's really interesting. This is why." Cool, great. And the next one might be, "Oh, I shared your event poster on my socials. Can't wait to come." Great. And then the third one might be, "Can I get something from you?"
Yeah.
So it's like little things like that
Yeah.
you can learn to be the kind of version of what Pete's talking about.
Yeah, totally.
Definitely.
Totally. It's all about that interaction. I remember, if I think about it, I think someone who even worked quite closely with us at the label, and he started just from a bit of banter with Mark Knight on his socials through supporting the same football team. You know, so he actually had a similar interest, but just went in that way and became a bit chatty over 6 months of occasionally just sharing a bit of banter, the odd reply to Instagram stories, and he's getting interaction from Mark because it's not just, "Hey mate, can you sign my track?"
Yeah. And I guess also if you receive like the hundreds of demos that you guys receive every week, if you saw a name that you've met at ADE
Exactly.
or over LinkedIn, then it would probably stand out a bit more, wouldn't it?
Exactly. That's what you've got to remember. There's hundreds and hundreds. You've got to try and stand out a bit and be persistent, but not too stalkery, not too far. You've got to find this balance. But at the end of the day, it's human interaction.
And the thing
It's
is,
like anything in life.
Yeah.
we're all human. Like, I think there's this tendency for people trying to break through to put industry figures on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And actually, like, I don't know what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis most of the time, and I'm probably just as shy and awkward as you are.
Yeah,
So if you come
totally.
and talk to me, it's literally fine, and it will be fine.
I totally agree with you. And I remember once talking to somebody about doing interviews. So, you know, sometimes you'll have artists that have probably not done a lot of press in the past and get quite nervous about doing interviews. And I remember somebody asking me that once and like, "What do you have any tips on artists that are, like get a bit nervous before doing an interview?" And I'm like, "Yeah, remember that I'm probably really nervous about doing the interview as well, and that I'm probably on the same level as you.
Yeah.
I get anxious about doing an interview every time I do it. So just remember that the person that's probably speaking to you probably feels the exact same way."
Right? It's mad, isn't it? How we work as humans and we just put these people on this huge sort of thing. Because
Yeah.
I was the same when I first started working at Toolroom.
I know.
And went to like my first sort of winter music conference in Miami or something, and suddenly I'm looking at these artists thinking,
Staring at them from the back of the
they're my
room.
they're kind of my heroes, yeah, from the back of the room. I like it, biding my time. I remember the same thing and looking at them and just like, wow, how do I start talking to you? Da, da, da. And then the more working in the industry and just like, oh yeah, they're just like my mates. It's
Yeah,
just like,
exactly.
you just start chatting. They're just normal people. So it's just try and be relaxed about it.
Yeah.
You know?
And from your courses, have you found that people that are on the same course at the same time, do they end up like collabing with each other, working with each other and creating their own little network?
Yeah, and we love that. Like, to me, like,
amazing.
that's personally the most satisfying moments in my career have been when I've even been out and seen at our parties like a load of people in the same class all like hanging out together, having dreams, having aspirations. And we've had people collab and get signed. We've had people set up labels together. We've had people set up parties together. We've had people
amazing.
become
Oh, that's
friends,
so
get together. Like, there's so much.
Honestly, it sounds cheesy, but it is. It's so rewarding, and you have a sense of pride, and just you're really happy for them. Yeah, we had 5 students from one class get together. You had 3 from completely opposite ends of the country, 1 from Germany,
Yeah.
and all flew over. End up getting an Airbnb together.
Oh, nice.
And it was the night that came to the Toolroom event, and they ended up writing a track together in the Airbnb, and we signed it.
Yeah.
And we didn't sign it just because of that. It was right for the label, and now they're great mates, and they all support each other. It's great. It's really
And then
cool.
we hired one who now works for the Toolroom Academy. So
Oh yeah.
I know you really.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's so cool. I
Cal,
love
now
that.
our project manager actually works for us. You know.
yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. What a full circle.
That is a
it
proper.
is.
I love a full circle moment.
Yeah.
That's really
It's
special.
super cool, and I think it's something that's really nice, even at the earlier level of just when a class finishes, like one of our typical production classes online, 12 weeks, when it finishes and you've got say 20 students in a class, and you can see them all interacting on our live webinars and becoming friends and chatting, and we're really encouraging that because we'll create like online groups for them, on
Yeah.
Facebook, Instagram, Discord. They'll all chat to each other, and then they keep it going after the course. and keep supporting each other. And it's a lovely thing. It
That's
really
really
is a lovely thing to see.
Really nice. We touched upon earlier about one of the barriers also being financial struggles. How would you, or what would you suggest for artists to be able to balance the business side of their career with their creative vision? Because obviously, as we were saying before, a lot of artists still, did we say 76%, still have to have another job to be able to finance a lot of what they do. So, but I can imagine that for also in the same token, that can be quite hard when you're like in a creative flow, you want to be in the studio every day and you can't. So how do you find that balance between them two things?
I think for me, it's about having a good plan. Like,
Yeah.
nothing beats that. Like, I think what we encourage our students to do is have very specific goals. And it's not like, get a residency in Vegas or, get more followers online. We encourage them to have like achievable small goals that they work towards, and that then gives you a framework of what success looks like at any given time, and then it can help guide your decision making in terms of, should I be doing more strategic things for my career, should I be being more creative. In general, we do say to our students, though, like, definitely embrace the creative phase before worrying too much about the business stuff, because like when you start in your journey, I think you should totally be all in on that.
Yeah.
Forget everything else, actually, because that start is when you're learning. You're like a sponge. You should be getting influences in. You should be living life, and that should then come back into your music, into your art. Once you've got to a point, you've got a bit of momentum and you've got releases, and then you might start thinking to yourself, okay, how can I map this out to best break through and keep my momentum? And I think nothing beats like good planning.
Yeah, totally. I think that's how we've always been from the start as a business at Toolroom. It's run as a business. It's always been run like that from the start, from when it was, just Mark and Stuart and Miles at the beginning. And I came in a couple of years in and really saw that, really noticed that as a small unit, as a family, with their parents even involved, have always treated that from the start, and which is, it's part of its success. And I think that any artist at any level needs to think of it a bit like that, thinking an actual plan, but what's going to work for you? Everyone's got different budgets, everyone's got different jobs and lifestyles, so you can't magic up more money from anywhere. So to say, okay, I'd love to get this record out to loads of DJs. Let's go and have a look. I'm like, all right, a promo company wants this much. I haven't got that. Do you give up on that? Or do you think, right, no, how's a different way? What can work for me? And I think, as Miles says, a lot of it is planning. Even if it hasn't got to be the most perfect, detailed business plan, but saying, what am I trying to achieve? What do I have in terms of time investment as well as money, if I have any? How can I use that? And how do I use that wisely? Because I've had even conversations with students and trying to dig deep, and they're saying, oh, can't do this and I can't finish a track. And I'm like, map out your week to me. Just tell me what your week's like.
Yeah.
And, okay, if you move this and change this and do that and start to get a routine, this, I think, even going back to this sort of simple way of thinking, because you can't just magic up more money. And you can't just keep trying to get more part-time jobs and sucking away all that time of you trying to be someone creative. It seems like a cop-out, but there's always a way that you can find something. I think Mark used to say that to me as well. Mark would often say, if you really want it,
you will find a way.
You will find a way. And whether that's, okay, I get up at 6:30 for work. You start getting up at 5. And you do an hour of content, and you don't sit up at that night, watching some Netflix series. Maybe you have to sacrifice certain things. Mark's kind of he'll be very black and white when he tells people. He's not afraid to pull punches when he's like, what it takes to want it. And there's an element of that. You've got to really want it, and you've got to have drive as well. You've really got to. It's not an easy ride.
It's not. Sometimes I think from the outside, people that don't work in the industry really think like, oh, you lot just have so much fun, which we do. There is obviously a fun part to it, but it is. It's a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle,
isn't it? It's not a 9-to-5 job.
It's not a 9-to-5
any of us
job.
That work in the music industry.
Absolutely,
it is. Yeah,
you mentioned before about having like short-term goals.
Mm-hmm.
Do you sometimes find that artists that maybe have like this really, I mean, I think it's great having a big vision, don't get me wrong, and I think everybody has their big vision in life, but do you find that sometimes artists or creatives can have a long-term vision or really big visions and then kind of get lost in the present moment and in the smaller goals that will probably then not allow them to reach them bigger ones?
Yeah, definitely. Like, especially in music and labels, like we find artists get, and Pete's really articulate on this within the course, but artists often get totally caught up in a certain label that they're obsessed about, like say Toolroom or Defected or something like that, and they put all their emotional energy into that, send demos to those labels and maybe don't hear back or don't achieve what they want, and then it's like a disaster and they give up, and actually, like, you can kind of really frame it and challenge yourself. Is that actually a reasonable objective at this point in your career, or should you be looking for some ladder labels, for example, to get you there? In fact, you do a really good presentation on like a ladder label system. You explain to people about how to make the smaller steps to get towards that big goal. So it can actually be quite counterproductive sometimes to dream too big if you don't have the steps to get to that.
Totally. We say this all the time, there's two sides to it. Dream big and aim high. You know, it's great to have those dreams, but just have a realistic point of view of getting there. And the thing is as well, it's hard to know, I think, as an artist and just go, that's where I want to be, but is that where you actually belong? Sometimes when you actually start travelling towards it, when you get there, you even realise it's not the right space, and that's okay. Yeah. I think the key is to always think about, if I was doing this now, I'd be thinking about, right, how do I move forward next month? How do I move forward next month? Because on the same token, I say to people that, okay, if you're not getting anywhere by aiming for these really big labels, what's the reason? Maybe your music's not quite there yet for whatever reason. Okay, let's think about, using these steps, what we call these ladder labels, but at the same time, don't get caught up there for too long.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes people do that as well, and they spend a long time in, I don't know, it's a crude way of putting it, like these different tiers of the industry.
Yeah.
And you can find they get kind of stuck there and comfortable. So I do think you've always got to be thinking ahead of, like, what's your next move? What's the next move? And the next move you take, how will that help you to the next move? You've got to have some strategy of thinking about how you move forward. But very much going back to what you're saying, I think people do get caught up in that ultimate goal and dream, and it makes it can make it quite small. The opportunities.
Yeah, it can. I totally know what you mean about like moving on though, because like one thing I've noticed from being around successful artists is like particularly Mark, and then we've got a new guy, Crucy, who's coming through. They have almost zero nostalgia for things they've achieved. Like, they never ever look back and go, oh, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Mark never ever does that. He's not interested.
It's always forward.
Always forward.
It's always forward. It's like, what's the next one? What's the next one?
Yeah. I interviewed Tisha yesterday, and one of the questions was, what has been your highlight of the summer? She was like, I literally can't remember what I've done. I mean, she has had a really busy schedule, but she's like, I'm just focusing now on album launch, the next tour, that. And so, yeah, I get that.
It's drive. And I do think sometimes with some people that come into this, coming back to it, and it's not a negative view at it, but sometimes people can be just blinded by it, that they feel like there's this one big power move that's going to happen, and something's going to happen and they're going to get signed, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
It creates everything and everything's going to happen from there. And it's like, no, that's the beginning.
Yeah.
That's the beginning of you on the treadmill that never stops.
Yeah.
You've got to keep going and keep driving. So you do have to have a plan and drive. I think it's something we say, don't want to keep bigging him up all the time, but Mark really does. He does show that.
Yeah.
We learn a lot from being around him, that he has this just constant drive and never stops. He never stops.
Annoying, isn't it?
He'll go and do 3 shows in the States over a weekend, a long floor, flight home, and then he's back in the office Monday morning.
And that's it, is it?
Yeah, 9 a.m. kettle on.
Really? Wow.
He is rare that
that's
someone
amazing,
just keeps going after like 3 days and no sleep.
Oh, I respect it, but but that's what it takes. I think there's
and that's where Toolroom is, where it is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it's having, there's the whole team has that passion and drive, and that's what we try. You have to try to teach that, and and show people of what it really takes, but it's still achievable. It does take a lot of work, and that's where what we try to put into place of actually going, right, let's look at it in stages, let's look at what's achievable for where you're at, but it's always about how can you move on, how can you get to that next point.
Another thing that I wanted to touch upon is obviously we also work in an industry where I think there are a lot of sometimes broken promises, or thing is yes, you're going to do this, and then it's like, actually no, sorry, or just generally having a no, sorry, your track is not right for my label, or no, sorry, we're not going to book you. How have you found that artists deal with that? I don't want to say rejection, because it's not rejection, but at the end of the day it is kind of a...
Yeah,
because I feel, is that kind of a barrier as well for artists, like trying to get over that sense of, oh, they've told me no?
Yeah, I think so. And like we said earlier, we're all human beings and everyone's different and has different kind of abilities of dealing with that. But I think something I know I try and talk to students and new artists about that is rejection and disappointment.
Yeah,
I
disappointment.
suppose it's dealing with disappointment is the word, because as creative people, you get really excited when you have those highs and when it's feeling good, and then someone can literally just go poof, and just put this break, and it's like, whoa, it's a big thing to take, but it's something that we all face in life, let alone on an artistic journey. And it can be difficult, especially in those early stages. And our natural style with the Academy is very kind of, we're all about positive energy, just constantly just trying to be positive and try to empower people and show that anyone can achieve it with hard work. But you have to be careful, because some people can take that and just be like, that's it, I can achieve anything. And then if they get some disappointment, it's like a real shock. So we try to talk to people about this and open them that this will happen. It's going to happen in your career, in this industry.
Definitely. And I think another thing that can be even worse than rejection is just not hearing anything.
Yeah.
And actually,
God, yeah.
that's something I'm pleased that I feel the industry's getting better at, because I remember when we started the Academy, and even a bit before then, like the seeds of the idea that led to the Academy was when we engaged in demo feedback on a public level, and that hadn't really been done before. And it was a bit of we're trying to demystify it a little bit, but there was a lot of demos being sent and nothing being said back. And I think within reason that can be quite rude and dispiriting.
Agree.
People. If we're getting 1,000 a week, we can't reply to everyone, but there had to be some kind of system where we'd give some kind of acknowledgement at least. So I like to think that we've spearheaded a little bit of helping and improving that process of feedback for people. And there's better sites now like Label Radar and others, and more initiatives like feedback sessions, A&R feedback sessions with different labels at conferences that, demystify that area. But I still think we need to be better as an industry, because again, as I don't want to get my soapbox, but we do rely on this creator segment economically.
Absolutely.
It pays our wages, but it's also part of the ecosystem of dance music. That segment often will be the first to buy tickets, merchandise, pre-order. It's the most engaged, active segment. So we have to look after them.
Totally.
It's really important to us. I mean, I struggle with personal guilt all the time with that. And I've got to a point now where I'm getting people getting hold of me through social media DMs, they're taking my tips and working out my email address, which I give to people and stuff, sending me. And I'm like, I'm physically, because we're doing the Academy and we're doing this and supplying this, I now can't do it and get back to everyone. So I have this constant guilt. It's really weird. We're talking about this, but then I have to do it as well. There gets to a point where I'm like, I can't answer these emails for this, but that's why we do what we do and try to go to conferences and talk to people and do these events and go, come see us, see us, come talk to us, come bring your music, because we understand how hard it is. It is so difficult to keep on top of it.
Totally, and I think what I've noticed resets people, and why we do our conferences, is just getting together with other like-minded people who can really refresh you when you've had that rejection or maybe just been blanked. It's those moments where you get together with your colleagues and your peers. We really try hard in these events that we do to break that barrier down between the label, the industry, and this segment. And that's why those events can be so inspirational.
Definitely. We literally try to say what we were talking about earlier. We're just normal people. Just come and say hello, have a drink, And we see it, and I'm not sort of saying this to try and say, oh, we're amazingly good, nice people, but you see it when
Yeah, of course,
they come,
yeah.
and it's like they just relax a bit and they leave thinking like, oh yeah, these guys are kind of cool, and it's like, yeah, most people are. It's cool, you know, come and meet them. It's really important that. I think that's the key thing. What you're saying, it's breaking down this barrier, because that's what they see. They see it as a barrier.
Yeah.
Of how do I get in there? How do I get over that?
As an industry, what other main things do you think we really need to improve on to help break down these barriers? I know there's quite a few, but what's your like main ones that would come to mind?
Two for me. I think we need to do better at demystifying the kind of event booking, that space. Like, I think there's been a lot of good work done around how to learn how to get signed and how to learn how to make music. I feel like that like feels more open and transparent. Mm-hmm. But I have to say that there still remains a lot of a lack of clarity on is like, what do booking agents do? How do I get gigs? What's the normal amount to be paid for a warm-up set or for any gig? That bit of the industry is hard, because I mean, I read online on the way here, like there's 3 clubs closing a week or something.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's tough out there. So I understand like the pressure's on to just make events work on any level. But I think that's maybe the next bit of the industry that could do with being a bit less gatekeepery and more open, and maybe there could be some work done around
Yeah, a little bit more
education,
transparent of how that works.
I think so, because it still feels a little bit disconnected and remote in the way that record labels used to be, I think 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's one. The second thing for me is still around diversity. Like, I still feel like it's still very white and male.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of work around helping more female identifying talent come through. So we have our We Are Listening platform.
Yes.
Which we're really passionate about.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember, I guess, a moment of empathy that I shouldn't have needed, but I had, was when we did educational events for the first time in Brighton at BMC. We had a bit of feedback from one or two female attendees that said they felt quite intimidated because it was like 98% men and just like a couple of women in the room. And I didn't really take that on board until we did our first We Are Listening event, and I had to welcome everyone, and it was all women in the room and just me.
And you felt
And
it.
suddenly I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Now I get it. And it shouldn't have taken me that to see that in the face, but there was an element of like, okay, well, I get it.
Yeah.
And having those conversations with them at that event of how they really felt.
Yeah.
It was quite eye-opening.
Just this constant like, oh, so you actually produce, like that assumption that well, you won't, and even down to like representation of like when you see like production software sold, it's often like men in the copy that are using it, and it's like there's so much work that can be done around how we open those doors, and we're doing a bit, but we need to do more. So there are two from me, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it has, the industry as a whole within that area has improved massively over the last kind of like 3 to 5 years when you look at it. If you look back, if you actually look back and did a comparison from like 10 years ago of lineups and all sorts now, it's a huge change, and it actually shows how crazy it was.
Do you know what? The other day I had to do something. So Time Warp this year are 30 years old.
Yeah.
And I had to do some work with them, and they'd sent me over all of their lineups since the very beginning. And so I'd written out this script. It was to do some voiceovers, and I was just looking for female artists to put inside this script. And they were like, and there literally wasn't any for like, it was like Monica Cruz for like 10 years, like for the first 10 years, and that was it.
Yeah.
And I do think that over probably like the last 6-7 years, it has definitely improved, but it's still got quite a big way to go, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I think from my side, actually, on a positive note, I think on the flip of it is it's nice to see a lot more industry sort of tastemakers, people in position, giving new artists a bit more limelight, which I think is really cool. So I think that for me has been something which I've loved seeing, you know, from just even like the bigger radio shows, and they really make a point now of actually trying to highlight and spotlight more new artists, and there's a lot more platforms like that coming up now, which I think is good. But I still do think, I still think even that, all areas, there's still improvement to be done to give them more possible spotlight.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
it is difficult. It's difficult. I mean, we found it hard from a record label, you know, and when we even find people within the academy, and it's like, okay, how do you give these artists a big spotlight? And we kind of set up a whole new release series to actually spotlight that, where we actually go, right, here's 10 tracks from artists that we're betting on. We're putting our money on these guys, and that's difficult, you know. So everyone can face their difficulties in doing that, because at the end of the day, we are still a business.
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot riding on what we put out as music. So we're trying to find ways within that as well, of not just the educational side. It's like, well, how do you follow through? Because you can't just promise everyone a release.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once they go through that process. So we're trying.
Yeah, you guys are doing a great job. Do you think from the report, a lot of music educators and other institutions have taken a lot of learnings from this?
I'd like to think so. I think because it is the most comprehensive report, I think, in this space, with 273 artists interviewed, it feels like a substantial piece of work. I think I'd encourage educators in the scene to read it, to really challenge their curriculums, because I think one thing I've noticed in educational organisations is, and one thing we're really hot on, is like, you've got to update your curriculum all the time, because things are changing so quickly.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see it. I mean, we really care about our students getting good value. We're here to serve our students, so we always pressure test what we're teaching them. And I think what the report showed is a lot of lack of clarity in a lot of technical areas within marketing and artist development, and I'd love to see those be taught more clearly and with more granularity in different educational courses. And also, I think there should be a deeper trend towards specialism in education. I think one thing that you're seeing is, especially during COVID, there was everyone was an educator all of a sudden, I think, just to get through. Some of them have lasted, some of them haven't, but I think you're seeing increasingly a trend of specialising in genre.
Yeah.
And that's something I think creates more value for students.
Definitely, because I think when we first started, and going back, when the production certificate kind of launched 6 years ago, there was a lack of that. And the people that had come to us and had an experience of education, and it was like, oh, okay, you've been on a production course, and what was that for? Kind of house music. Okay, what did you learn? And it was so broad and vague.
Yeah, maybe even to degree level as well.
Yeah,
really.
And this, look, we're not here to just cuss and put things other down and say that we're amazing. We're specialists in what we do.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that they had gone to quite, big educators, and saying that, okay, you're going to learn how to do this specific thing. And it was like, that's really broad. Okay, yeah, you're going to learn how to make house music. What type of house music?
Yeah.
There's so many different sub-genres within house music, and then the knock-on effects of that. And it resonated with me, because I did a production course in over 20 years ago. And it was the same thing. I remember the very beginning of it, and it was like, oh, okay, you've shown me how to use this program. I can put a kick drum in, a hi-hat, a clap. Why doesn't mine sound like that? That artist is who I love. I really love that. And, and they were a bit like, oh, and they couldn't take it that far. And so it's seeing a bit more of that. And you're seeing that now. We're seeing people that really hold specific, detailed sort of skills starting to educate more, which is great. I think that's really cool to see that. But I think, just going to what Miles said, it's just seeing some of the, like you said, even at degree level, some of that style of education, I think they need to get more on the pulse, a little bit more updated.
Yeah. And to just react to, what people are struggling with, rather than just teach an off-the-shelf course.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I don't want to beat our own drum, but we love innovation in education. We really thrive off that. We want to be the best, and we want to give the best, most innovative education to our students. And I think the research report was just a massive learning curve for us. We understand production inside out, because we've been a record label for 21 years.
Yeah.
Breaking through as an artist is a different thing. So we wanted to really learn the problems people were facing before embarking on this course and teaching a load of stuff we didn't really know about.
Yeah.
So we've learned a lot from it. The report's open for anyone to download and read on our website, and it's been picked up by quite a few media outlets and stuff, which is awesome to see. But I would encourage any education institution that teaches artist development to give it a read.
Yeah, 100%.
I guess there's loads of things that probably you wouldn't have, well, you probably thought about but never had included in any of your courses before, but now from the report have thought, okay, well, this is...
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
You know, when we've learned loads on the journey. We it's taken us time of doing it to actually learn and get feedback and constantly adjust and tweak and build on what we've done from the start. And I think the report's definitely the biggest.
Yeah.
That's the biggest sort of
Eye-opener.
leap we've seen. So just, I think, really understanding how people feel, how they actually feel as new artists, and trying to go, okay, let's tap into that, you know, as well as obviously skills, but how they're feeling.
Yeah.
Try and help people actually have a bit more of a positive feel that they can actually achieve this as a career.
Yeah.
Well, the report is super, super interesting. So anybody that's listening, I really encourage you to take a look, download, because it's very insightful, and I've learnt a lot from it and from chatting with you guys today. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
I have like 2 really random questions at the end of the podcast.
What's my favourite Krispy Kreme?
What's your favourite Krispy Kreme? That is what I've wanted to know throughout this whole podcast.
Oh, it's got to be the Biscoff one that's filled with like the Biscoff
Oh,
cream.
yeah.
It's really arrogant, but yeah, I'm all about food that just makes me feel disgusting after I've eaten.
Wonderful. Wonderful. What's yours?
What's just the plainest? What's the classic plain?
What, just a
Glazed.
jam donut?
No, I think it's
That makes me
literally just the
sound
glazed
vanilla.
ring donut
Yes.
with no filling at all.
That would be me.
With no filling?
Yeah.
Nice.
Dry.
Yeah,
I know.
going on? Why we work well?
Yeah, more classic.
Yeah, classic. As you are.
So, because this podcast is called Can You Put Me on Guest List, I ask every guest at the end of the podcast what their guest list rule is.
Oh, guest list rule. What, when people come to us and say, can you put me on the guest list? Mine is, I say it to everyone. I'm just like, don't turn up at the door smashed.
I thought you said I sacked everyone. I was like, wait, what happened here? I missed it.
Like, everyone on the door. No, when people ask me for guest list, I am a bit like, you're representing me. If your name's down under me on the guest list, then just come to the door like fairly straight and don't be arrogant and don't push and everything like that.
Bring me donuts.
I'm quite strong with. I suppose I'm quite strong with like manners. and stuff.
I
Yeah.
was going to say that because I'm going to sound like a kind of Victorian teacher here. Just don't be late. Like, don't be too late because then it bothers me because I have to try
Yeah.
and come out of the club.
Oh
again.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
That is the most annoying thing.
Yeah, don't
I
call me from outside the club with loads of
3 a.m.
problems at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I'm done.
You're not my friend at that point.
School's out. I'm having fun.
Exactly.
It's 3 a.m.
Exactly.
It's got to be the same area, or don't turn up with like 2 extra.
Yeah.
That's really annoying, and it's
That's-
like a WhatsApp. It's like, oh man, I'm here, but so and so came, and you're just like, really? Yeah,
It's 4:30 in the morning.
yeah.
And finally, I play this game, and it's called Pass the Question, where every guest passes on a question to the next guest without knowing who it is. And actually, yours is so fitting because, as I said before, my interview yesterday was with Tisha, and her question for you guys is, what are you doing to contribute to the culture?
Oh wow!
I know.
Rewatch the
Well, just listen to everything we've just spoken about.
yeah. I would say it
I
is.
think you're doing a pretty good job.
To summarize, it's trying to help the next gen. You know,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
what it's about.
Absolutely.
We've got to think of a question for the.
So
next
now you have to
guest.
think of a question, and it doesn't even have to be music related. It could be anything.
I just instantly go to food, don't I?
You always go to food.
I'm sorry, yeah. Everything with me is just music or food. Or maybe like get them to admit literally like what's the most embarrassing fail they've ever had. Whether, you know, if
Just
it,
in life in general.
yeah, it could be in life in general. If it's an artist, like, you know, something that they haven't told the world.
Something that you haven't told the world.
Something that you haven't told the world that you
failed at.
that you failed at massively, like whether it's at
Right.
a gig, a live performance,
Love that.
trying to
You failed
trying to network with something, you know. Because we've all had it. I'm sitting here now with 3 or 4 thinking of when I first started working with Toolroom. I probably wouldn't want to tell the world of things like calling like a really famous DJ the completely wrong name or something like that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I've done that.
Oh, I've had I've pronounced DJ names wrong in the past before, and that's never gone down
It's
well.
quite hard though, isn't it? With
I know,
pronunciation.
and now
with
sometimes
someone.
there's artists that have like their names don't even have any like, they're just like random letters, and I'm like,
Just
how am I
made up
supposed to
words.
know what
Yeah.
that
Vowels
is?
in there.
Yeah, put some vowels in your name.
Make
Blah, blah,
up
blah.
new words. It's
I
not that
know.
hard, it's,
Sometimes like I'm just like I'm just gonna try and avoid saying their name and just see if I can get through an interview without saying anyone's name.
do we get to have 2 questions if there's 2 of us? Because you'll probably come up with a more interesting.
And that's the
question.
pressure's on there. Mine will just go to like, what's the if you could go back in time to one club night, what would it be?
That's a great question.
That is a good question. See,
One
you just
club
put me to
night.
shame straight away.
Yours was quite negative,
Mine's
but I
just
like
negative mine's negative and silly, and you go to something that's gonna.
I feel like I've like worked out both of your personalities in this like last hour through everything
why
you
we-
said. It's been great.
It's why we work well as a team, isn't it?
You really do. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having
pleasure.
us.
Thank you.
And thank you for all of the work that you guys do. And congratulations on
too.
the new course and everything that you guys are absolutely smashing it as always.
Thank you. You too with the
Appreciate it.
podcast. It's amazing.
you.
So thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. And I'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Bye.